Hey guys, it's 3.1 video, and our learning objective is students will be able to read in chapters 6 and 7 and analyze the effects of oppression on Peter's life. Question I want you to have in your mind as we go through this one is, what is oppression and how does it affect Peter? Well, we have already heard one writer talk about oppression when we read A Raisin in the Sun. Lorraine Hansberry had this to say about oppression. It really doesn't matter whether you are talking about the oppressed or the oppressor. An oppressive society will dehumanize and degenerate everyone involved. She also said this: obviously the most oppressed group of any oppressed group will be its women, who are twice oppressed. I thought I would share that interesting quote with you, even though it doesn't apply directly to Peter's life. So we've heard this word oppression before. Let's look at it a little bit more closely and get a definition down. This definition comes from Courageous Conversations, a program that Robbinsdale District has used to help teachers understand oppression and how to help our students gain more power. And so here it is: the systematic subjugation or control of one social group by a more powerful social group for the social, political, and economic benefit of the more powerful social group. That's a mouthful. Here's a more simple definition: the unfair use of power over a group to keep them in a state of disadvantage. It's important to understand, too, that oppression works in systems, kind of like a spider web. There's a lot of different pieces to oppression, and those pieces work together to harm an individual. So sometimes using the term systems of oppression is a helpful way to understand how it works. Let's talk about a little bit more about how it works then. Looking at oppression as a bird cage can be a helpful way to look at it. If you look closely at just one of the wires in a bird cage, and you look down the bottom and all the way up to the top, you'll think, you know, that one wire isn't really doing that much. The bird shouldn't be trapped in this bird cage. The bird could easily get around that wire. But it isn't until you back up and you look at all of the wires in the cage, and then you understand, oh, the bird, if it went that way, would be trapped by another wire. If it went by that way, it would be trapped by another wire. And you realize that the cage has completely imprisoned the bird, just as much as a dungeon made of stone. And that's the way that you have to think about oppression to understand its true power. The power is in the many wires and how they are organized to trap the bird in this analogy. So if we're thinking about people, it's how different systems are organized that keep them without power. All right, let's take a look at another term, intersectionality, to better understand oppression. Intersectionality is a framework for understanding different systems of oppression. There are different systems in our world of oppression, and using the intersectionality wheel is a good way to understand how complex it is, all of these different systems. Each person is a puzzle made up of different pieces representing their social identities, such as age, race, faith, class, sexuality, disability, lived experiences, gender, and more. Puzzle pieces interconnect and intersect and affect how a person is shaped by the identities and the oppression that we have in our world. So intersectionality helps us understand that social oppression or privilege doesn't happen in isolation. It's not just about skin color for Peter. It's about being cut off from his family and not having his own resources to escape. There's a really cool website where you can actually find what your intersectionality wheel would look like. I did one for Peter based on what we know about Peter at this point in the book. And you can you can do one for yourself too. I really encourage you to do this. If you type Wheel of Power Privilege and Exploratorium in a search engine, you will find the link. And it's just a quick little survey, and then you'll get your own personalized intersectionality wheel. If you look at Peter's intersectionality wheel, you know, it's not just about his skin color, but skin color is a part of it, right? He's in this portion right here because of his skin color, but it's also about being cut off from his family. Here he is, away from power because of that. And because of being indigenous, he's marginalized, the farthest spot away from power because of that. And then also wealth. He doesn't have enough money to live on his own or to pack up and leave the Schultzes and find his family in northern Minnesota. So he's also marginalized here for wealth. So the intersectionality wheel shows us all of these different ways people can experience privilege or oppression. And as I said, I encourage you to try your own and see where you fall on the intersectionality wheel. Well, how is Peter marginalized? Literally, being marginalized means being put in the margins of a page, like where the white space is and there's no words. But we take it now to mean more figuratively, and it means being put in an unimportant or powerless position. And so someone who is oppressed from these different social identities is marginalized. Peter has been pushed into the margins of society through oppression, and he faces exclusion, discrimination, and limited access to resources and opportunities because of it. His experiences are overlooked and undervalued by many in the book. There's one good example of how he is marginalized by his peers on page 51, when we hear about back at the state school how many of his peers mistreated him. One such peer, whispered a threat or slur on page 51, and it ends up getting Peter in trouble when Peter responds, not the student who said it, whose name was Leo. Peter's also marginalized by adults. At Owatonna High School, which he only attends for a few weeks, he tries raising his hand to answer a question, and the teacher ignores him. When Peter doesn't put his hand down, the teacher stares him down until he does so. And finally, Peter is marginalized by systems. He's given the label bright, he tells us, by the state school, and it follows him to Houston High School. And it made teachers expect more and gave prejudiced teachers something to disprove with ridicule and sarcasm, he notes. He also is marginalized by systems when his grandmother is ignored when she tries to petition for Peter's care. He continues to live in the state school as an orphan who has no family who wants to care for him. They don't even tell him that she has petitioned for this or that she exists. All right, I hope that you enjoy reading chapters 6 and 7 and that oppression is a little bit clearer to you now.